The rivers and streams, found all throughout Scotland, are known to be dangerous, as this is where many dark and wicked spirits dwell, like the Kelpie or the Shellycoat. When dealing with the Fae, nothing is as it seems. Even an old woman washing her clothes in the water may turn out to be a portent of death, a messenger from the other side, the Bean Nighe. The Bean Nighe, known as the Washerwoman or Washer at the Ford, is said to be an omen of death. She can commonly be found in dark, lonely places, next to streams or pools. Here the spectral woman washes the blood-stained clothes of those about to die. Many suggest that only those doomed to die could see the Washerwoman, but this is not always the case. In the Highlands, there was a belief strongly held that if a woman died during childbirth, her soul would be trapped by the Fae, and she would become a Bean Nighe, doomed to perform the hideous task of bringing the message of death to others for all time. Some say that this terrible fate could be avoided if the dead woman's clothes were washed in a river on the day she died. If not, her spirit would wash the clothes of the dead for eternity. There are many different descriptions of the Bean Nighe, and she seems to have different properties depending on her location. In Perth, it is said that the creature was a small, overweight woman, dressed in green, and if you were able to get between her and the river, your life would be spared. On the Isle of Skye, the Bean Nighe was said to take the form of a small yet pitiful child. If you could sneak up behind the child and grab her, she would reveal to you when and how you would die. If the spirit sees you first, then you would become paralysed for the remainder of your life. One of the stranger descriptions of the Bean Nighe comes from the Isle of Mull, where she is said to have unusually long breasts. These would interfere with her washing, so it was common practice to have them slung over a shoulder. This way the breasts would hang down her back. It is said in Mull that if you saw this spirit, not to walk away. Instead, quietly approach from behind and suckle from the breasts. Claiming to be a foster child, she would accept you as kin and grant you whatever knowledge you seek. She would even cease her washing if the clothes were that of her new kin or their friend. On the other hand, someone who was kin of the Bean Nighe could offer the blood-soaked clothes of an enemy and seal their fate. The most common description, however, is that of a tall, malnourished woman, old and shriveled, with a large hooked nose and a single nostril. Her arms ended in rough, calloused hands with sharp, claw-like nails. The same was true of her webbed feet. A terrifying sight to behold in a dark evening. Like the others, this creature could be apprehended and mastered, forced to communicate at the tip of a blade. Being a spirit of the other realm, granted the Bean Nighe immense knowledge and power. Some even thought that by capturing the spirit, they could force her to grant them their greatest wish. Many have tried and failed to tame the Bean Nighe and suffered a foul death as punishment. At times the Washerwoman was known to sing an eerie, mournful dirge as she soaked the blood-stained garments. Some thought that if you heard this song, you would be fated to die a violent death. Others said that the song itself was a portent for a great calamity. In old Scottish folklore, there are many tales that speak of encounters with the Washerwoman. One comes from the island of Benbecula and was told by Gilly Casfluch, or the wet-footed man of Clanranald. The man was returning home and heading to the upland of Benbecula. He was skirting the western edge of a loch when he spotted in the distance an old woman washing clothes at the waterside. Knowing that this could be the dreaded Bean Nighe, he slowed his pace and began to sneak closer. As he drew nearer the pale woman, he could hear a cold, moaning lament hanging in the night sky. His fears were realised. This lone woman was the nightmarish spirit known as the Bean Nighe. Understanding the legends of her power and the tragedies they portend, Gilly Casfluch became determined to master the Washerwoman. He crept ever closer, low to the ground with silent steps. The space between them shortened. Finally, within arm's reach, The man pounced and grasped the mysterious woman.
"Let me go,"
wailed the Bean Nighe.
"Give me freedom of feet. The reek from your grizzled beard is near putting stop to my breath. Much more would my nose prefer, and my heart desire, the mist of the mountains."
"I will not allow thee away," claimed Gilly, "till you promise to grant me my 3 choice desires." With the cold and tired look of defeat, the woman said,
"Tell them quick, ill man."
With no hesitation, Gilly gave his list. "You will tell me for whom you're washing that shroud and crooning that dirge. You will grant me my choice of wife, and you will keep abundant the seaweed in the creek of our town." The Bean Nighe, with a mournful expression, answered the man.
"The shroud I am washing, and the song I am singing, belongs to the great Clanranald of the Isles himself, and he shall never again, in his living life, walk within the countryside of Benbecula."
Without waiting for the spectral woman to finish, Gilly tore the shroud from her hands, lashed it to his spear, and launched both into the loch. He left the Bean Nighe, and with all the strength he could muster, rushed back to the head of his clan. When he arrived, Gilly was told that Clanranald had come down with some illness and was resting in bed. Quickly, Gilly went to his bedside and told him of the Washerwoman and her grim omen. Clanranald leapt from his bed, and in a panic ordered a cow be killed and a coracle be made. A coracle is a small one-personed boat made from willow rods and cowhide. The leader's orders were carried out with all swiftness. The completed coracle was brought to him. It is said that the great chief Clanranald left the island and headed to the mainland. This is the last time he was ever seen. It would seem that in some fashion, the prophecy of the Bean Nighe came true. Clanranald never again walked within the countryside of Benbecula. Another quite popular tale of the Bean Nighe comes from just north of the Cromarty Firth, where a young maid was returning home on a Sunday morning. She was walking down a well-trodden path next to a shallow stream when she suddenly came across a strange sight. No more than 10 feet from her was a tall, emaciated woman. This strange person was standing in the stream just beyond a cluster of rushes. The bizarre female was beating clothes on a small flat stone. The shirt she was working on that moment seemed to be covered in a dark red stain. Not wanting to become involved with the old woman's grim task, the maid hurried by. On passing the woman, she dared another glance. It was then she saw a pile of 30 or so shirts and smocks on the far side of the stream. Every single one was stained in dark red blood. The maid was disturbed not only by the bloody clothes, but also the woman's unnatural aura. She turned her eyes from the abnormal sight, quickened her step, and headed for home, with an uneasy feeling deep in her heart. Later that same day, during the Sunday service at the local Fern Abbey, the roof would collapse, burying the unfortunate congregation. This incident led to the death of 36 parishioners. After this unfortunate event, the maid made mention of the strange woman at the stream to her grandfather, who still remembered the tales of the Banshee and the spirits of the land. He told her she had seen the Bean Nighe, and that the bloodstained clothes were owned by those doomed to die in the abbey. The historical records do seem to reinforce this last tale. On Sunday the 10th of October in 1742, during a service, lightning struck the abbey, causing the stone-flagged roof to collapse on the congregation. The number of dead was estimated at 50. The minister survived due to the stronger construction of the pulpit. After this terrible accident, the minister ordered a new church to be built south of the original abbey and would reuse the original stone. The Bean Nighe is often compared with the Irish Banshee. The Banshee is a mythical fae being from Irish folklore. It is said that those who hear the scream of the Banshee were doomed to die. However, this is not an accurate comparison, as the Banshee is far more malevolent. The Bean Nighe is forced to wash the blood from the clothes. She is a spirit trapped against her will, and takes no pleasure in her endless task. A more accurate comparison to the Irish Banshee would be the Scottish Queenig, a fae spirit commonly heard wailing and crying before a catastrophe. Many say that the cries of a Queenig were heard the night before the massacre of Glencoe, but that may be a tale for another time. The washerwoman who pretends death is actually quite a common concept in Celtic mythology. One of the oldest tales comes from Brittany in France and tells of Les Lavandières, or the midnight washerwoman. This would be a group of 3 women who would go down to the water's edge at midnight and clean the shrouds of those about to die. In France, it is said that these women would ask passers-by to aid in the cleaning. The washerwoman would drown those who refused to aid in their task. In Wales and Cornwall, passers-by would try to avoid the washerwoman, as if they were seen they would be forced to help wring out the sheets. It was said that if a helper twisted the sheet in the same direction as the washerwoman, it said that their arms would be torn from their sockets and their body engulfed by the sheet. On the other hand, if they twisted the sheet in the opposite direction, they would be granted 3 wishes. It is interesting that the spectral washerwoman can be found in all Celtic lands, apart from England. There are some scattered tales on the English border, but it is not prevalent in the folklore of the country. Religious scholars have suggested that these washerwomen may in some form represent the triple goddess of the old Celtic tradition. In Scotland, the triple goddess was not worshipped. In fact, it was quite the opposite. The people of the old Scottish highlands feared these deities and would perform rituals and magics to keep them away. Known as the Cailleach Mór, or divine hags, all the workings of nature belonged to these women. The Pictish belief in the goddesses of nature seem to be indigenous to Scotland and predate the Celtic triple goddess. In the ancient Pictish tradition, there was many matriarchal customs. The Picts recognised succession only by the female line, and would in their own way venerate the female rulers of nature. On the subject of old deities, there are some tales of the Bean Nighe that suggest she was the Celtic goddess Clota, which is the patron goddess of the River Clyde and was worshipped by a Welsh tribe who lived in the Strathclyde area during the Roman invasion. In all, the Bean Nighe, or the washerwoman, is an incredibly interesting being and can be traced back through many countries and many years. But still to this day, there are dark, lonely lochs and rivers hidden away within the deepest forests of Scotland, where the Doineshi still rule, and the tormented soul of the Bean Nighe toils away with her endless task. Thank you for listening.